Isabella and Chloe were two typical American teenage girls. After school, they spent all their free time together, watching scary movies, often sleeping over at each other's houses, and going shopping for new clothes. They loved parties, loved hanging out with friends, and generally loved having fun and enjoying life. They could never have imagined the terrible fate that awaited them. One night, Isabella and Chloe decided to have a girls' night out. They planned to sneak out to a nightclub once their parents went to bed. Isabella kissed her parents goodnight and went upstairs to her room. When she thought everyone was asleep, she took out her cell phone, called Chloe, and told her she would wait for her at the store down the street. Chloe understood and hung up. Isabella quietly opened her bedroom window, trying not to wake anyone. She climbed onto the windowsill and slid down the drainpipe. As she walked down the deserted street, she had a strange feeling that someone was watching her. She looked around but saw no one. When she reached the corner store, there was no one around, so she took out her cell phone and called Chloe. "Okay, I'm at the store," she said. "Hurry up, or I'm going home." "What's wrong?" Chloe asked. "I don't know," Isabella replied. "This night feels different. Something's not right. I have a bad feeling." "Calm down." "You're just being paranoid," Chloe laughed. "I'll be there in 2 minutes." Isabella hung up but couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her. 5 minutes later, Chloe arrived and the girls headed to the nightclub. They were too young to be allowed in, but the bouncers never asked for their IDs. They had a great time, dancing to good music and flirting with the guys on the dance floor. It was around 3 a.m. when Isabella was having a pleasant conversation with a very nice guy who looked about 10 years older than her. Suddenly, she felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. It was a text message from her ex-boyfriend, Anthony. She hadn't heard from him since they broke up about a month ago. The message read, "Come outside. I have a big surprise for you." Puzzled, she looked around and saw Chloe chatting with another guy. Without saying goodbye, Isabella left the nightclub. She took only a few steps before receiving another message. It read, "Meet me around the corner." The street was dimly lit, and there was no one around. Isabella still had a bad feeling but decided to proceed cautiously. Inside the nightclub, Chloe was looking for her friend. After 15 minutes, she started to lose patience. She walked across the dance floor but couldn't find Isabella. She even checked the bathrooms, but Isabella wasn't there either. At 3:27, Chloe received a text from Isabella. It said, "Meet me outside, hurry." When Chloe went outside, she received another text, "Aye, around the corner." When Chloe turned the corner, she was met with a horrific sight. Her heart nearly stopped in her chest. Isabella was hanging upside down from a streetlight in the parking lot. The sparkling lights of a Christmas garland were wrapped around her ankles. Beneath her was a huge pool of blood. Her body was completely naked, and there were deep, ragged wounds on her abdomen and chest. Chloe collapsed to the ground, screaming hysterically. Several people standing at the nightclub entrance heard her screams and ran to her. When they turned the corner and saw Isabella's bloody corpse, they were horrified. The police were called, and Chloe was interrogated for hours. However, still hysterical, she couldn't explain much. Sobbing, she recounted how she and Isabella had snuck out of their houses and gone to the nightclub. She tried to remember all the guys they had flirted with on the dance floor. She was asked if she suspected anyone, but Chloe couldn't think badly of anyone. As much as she wanted to help catch Isabella's killer, she was helpless. During the interrogation, one of the police officers showed a plastic bag and pulled out a blood-stained envelope. "We found this in your friend's throat. It's a letter for you," the officer said, handing her the envelope. "For Chloe" was written in large letters on the envelope. With trembling hands, she took the letter out of the envelope and started to read. "Maybe if you had stayed in bed like you were supposed to, none of this would have happened. Don't roam at night. Anything can happen." The police caught her as she fainted. An ambulance took Chloe to the hospital, where they tried to bring her out of shock. The next day, when Chloe returned home, she was still shaken. Her parents told her that Isabella's ex-boyfriend, Anthony, had been arrested on suspicion of murder. Then he was released after passing a lie detector test. He claimed his phone had been stolen on the day of the murder. The police didn't rule him out as a suspect, but they didn't have enough evidence to keep him in jail. Fate willed that Isabella's killer was never found. No one was brought to justice for the murder, and gradually it was forgotten. 2 years passed, and Chloe had almost managed to forget that terrible night when her best friend was brutally murdered. One night, Chloe called her boyfriend and asked him to meet her in the park. It was already around 2 a.m. As she headed to the park, she felt the same feeling Isabella had described the night she was killed, as if someone was watching her. She was almost at the park, but the strange feeling wouldn't go away, although Chloe tried to ignore it. Her phone rang, and she received a text message from her boyfriend. "Almost there, baby. Love you lots." She felt much better. She had to walk past the store. The park was behind it. She started to walk around the store when she suddenly heard a noise behind her. She immediately started running. Chloe's boyfriend was waiting for her in the park. It was already 2:35 a.m. when he received a text from her. "Go ahead and you'll see me." He did as the message instructed and walked forward. Hanging from one of the trees, he saw Chloe's corpse. Christmas lights were wrapped around her ankles. She was completely naked and covered in blood. He called the police, and they interrogated him all night. The next day, when Chloe's friend returned home, he found a letter on the doorstep. It was stained with drops of blood. The letter said, "Don't roam at night. Anything can happen." I wish I could say that Isabella and Chloe's killer was found, but that's not the case. The police claim the investigation is ongoing, but they have no suspects. These murders are rarely remembered these days. At the time, they received a lot of publicity, but due to the strange lack of evidence, the killer was never found, and they were soon forgotten. Everyone went on with their lives. You might wonder why I know so much about this. Well, I wouldn't want to go into details, considering the investigation is still ongoing. But if you're curious, I'll let you in on a secret. I was the police officer who investigated these cases. I was the one who handed Chloe the blood-stained letter. Are you still curious why the killer was never found? I'll tell you my favorite phrase: don't roam at night. Anything can happen. One day they began to come to me, emerging from walls, breaking through jagged openings, glowing with a faint blue light, peering into my eyes from the depths of voids and hatches, breathing loudly from narrow dark cracks everywhere they were. Scratching, crying, calling, begging to be let in. They were from different worlds and time periods, of different races and appearances. In dreams, they reached out to me with their hands and tentacles, looked at me with sad eyes, and kept calling. At first, I managed to hide from everyone that something was wrong with me, that I was seeing and hearing things. But later, much later, I began to lose my grip. They wouldn't let me sleep, work, socialize with friends, or relax. Nothing at all. The first time it happened at work, I was talking to a client. One of them reached for me from under the table, suddenly and sharply. I jerked away and screamed. The client gave me a strange look, but I made an excuse about knee pain, an old injury. After that, things got worse. Day by day, they made me look like a fool, a hysteric, a lunatic. But I knew they were real. The doctors didn't think so. They took me to the psych ward after one of the callers scratched me. They thought I had tried to slit my wrists. I tried to explain to the doctors in various ways what was happening to me, but they managed to get me to tell the truth. Since then, I've been here, in a room, not with padded walls, but in an isolated ward. I have access to the internet. I can walk the corridors fairly freely. They know I'm not violent, but they don't let me go because the ones calling me are still around. They open doors in the walls where there were never any doors. They say I must leave through these doors, but I can't. I'm afraid and I don't want to. Someone new has started to appear now, 2 years after the first call. He is huge, he is terrifying. I've never seen him, but I've heard him. He moans somewhere in the walls, in the cracks. His voice is multifaceted. And he smells. Of hundreds of rotting corpses in crematoriums. He calls me, and there is nothing I can do. He calls me to him, to be his successor, his son in the realm of nightmare and horror. I no longer believe I am sane. Today I must do it, draw the final exit, the bloody door that will lead me to him. I think I will either die or finally lose myself in the world of my subconscious. But I can't stay in this nightmare any longer. I know that if the blood clots I will survive, but I will hope that my fevered mind deceives me and the nightmare ends, or a new one begins. With a piece of a spring secretly broken off from the bed, I proceed with my plan. The blood flows in weak spurts, and it doesn't hurt. I draw the door to him. The lines glow crimson, and it opens, right in the solid concrete wall. A door leading to the welcoming embrace of my parent. I am like him. I see it in the crimson light flowing from the door. I am changing. I am leaving. There's blood everywhere. The doctor looked around in shock and anger. I said to watch him especially closely. He was preparing for this. I warned you. We were watching. The nurse protested. But you know how it is. And where's the body? The doctor was extremely frustrated. Now there would be reports and inspections from the ministry. Where was it taken? Oh, where? The nurse hesitated. There was no body, just this. She led the doctor to the wall with the crudely drawn door. A piece of hospital pajamas was sticking out of the wall, as if it had grown into it, or was caught by the closing door.